And we are live. Welcome everyone to the Hangout. Today I will be continuing with the question and answer that we started Saturday. But today I won't be alone. Today I will have Real Raven with me. But before we will do that, Real Raven and I had a little discussion about what is a dog whistle and what the left means by the term dog whistle. So, Real Raven, you want to take it again?
Yeah, I was just trying to kind of define it the way I have never looked it up. It's just the way that I understand the term dog whistle, and that is, it's like a code or a replacement word that means something else. So, if you look at the example that I used was the word fella, which is by itself it's just like a guy, right? But what I've seen that on right-wing sites, it's used for as code for a person of color, specifically probably a man of color, somebody who, and more specifically, somebody did an assault or something. Oh, it was a fella, and it's not. Oh, it was a guy, but it's a person of color. Now, my thesis was that was a sort of a dog whistle, a replacement. And that's the way I understood the word dog whistle, that you're using a whistle that you can't hear, that the dogs can hear. So the people who are in your in-club understand the code, and the people who are in the out-group don't understand it. They just think, oh, it's a guy.
Well, if we look,
so that, to me, is a dog whistle.
If we look at the word fella, and I'm going to pretend that it matters. If we look at the word fella, a fella used to be a mafiosi in America. So the link with fella and crime has always been there, more or less, in America.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still not a good explanation of a dog whistle. And why isn't it? Because the OK hand signal is also a dog whistle.
Yep.
Okay. So
you're saying a dog whistle is not language?
Wanting to drink milk is a hand signal. Sorry, is a dog whistle. Sorry, not a hand signal. Wanting to drink milk.
So I understand now. I think that what you're saying is it's a dog whistle. If it's not language, it's just used like language.
No. What I'm saying is the left uses everything to be called a dog whistle, no matter what, no matter how far-fetched. Basically, the term dog whistle means nothing.
It must mean something to them.
Well, it means something to them if it fits their narrative, but as soon as it goes against their narrative, it doesn't mean anything. For example, there is this idea of calling for violence being a dog whistle as well. Don't get me wrong, obviously men don't call for violence, but if someone says anything that they consider negative towards any group they feel needs protection, then that thing they say is a dog whistle. Whilst at the same time they're openly calling out for violence, but that's not a dog whistle. Hi there, Toxic. Hi there, Michael. I'm not sure if Anxious is still here, but if she is, hi there, Anxious. So the whole term dog whistle that the left uses is meaningless. And why is it meaningless? Because it can mean anything they want it to mean at the moment they need it to mean that. And then we can try to find whatever explanation we can. Well, yeah, but maybe it means this, or maybe it means that in that situation. Wait a second. We're explaining their idiocy to us and to them to make sense of what they're doing. But what they're doing is so incredibly, how do you call this, hypocritical, that it doesn't matter whatever explanation they want it to be is the explanation it's supposed to have. And there's no way we can keep up with that. As I said, fella can be considered a dog whistle, but they can use the word fella themselves. Nigger can be a dog whistle. They can use the word nigger themselves. It doesn't matter. The OK hand signal, it's a dog whistle, but they can use it themselves. Drinking milk is a dog whistle, even though they can drink milk. The hypocrisy makes the very term dog whistle in this context useless. Meaningless.
Yeah, well, I would agree that it's useless to us, but it's useful to them.
No,
it just explains. I think it explains to the leftist. It will explain that I know what you think. That's what it does, and we all know what you think. Even you may say I'm not a racist. We know that you're a racist. That's what it is. It's like a wild card.
It's not so much we know you're a racist. It's I say you're a racist, therefore you must be. And whatever you do is a dog whistle. Well, you're a white person and you say I don't see color. See, that's a racist.
But isn't it interesting that the term racist is not so much it's not so much an external thing, but it's actually an internal state. So it's not so much what you do; it's more about what we think, what's happening inside you while you do it. You know.
Well, it's more like what we say you do. Therefore, it is because we say it is. You may say it's not what you said. You may say it's not what you meant. The person who I say is offended might not be offended, but therefore it still is.
Yeah, but the most it's more than just what we say you do. It's what we say you do and what kind of meaning it has, you know. Because it, like you said, if a black guy says in a comedy routine and they say nigger, then it's the same thing. It's the what, but it's the internal state is they're not guilty, you know. But if your internal state is you're guilty, then whatever you do has a different internal meaning. So it's about the inside of it's about the sin, you know, not about the actual action, you know. It's like, and they can read minds or can read souls or something, you know. Anyway, shall we get on with this thing?
Yeah, sure, we can. But yeah, when it comes to the word dog whistle, it's a meaningless term. It really is. And why is it meaningless? Because it can mean whatever they want it to mean at the moment they need it. I'm sorry, one apple is one apple, even if I want a banana.
Yeah.
Police.
But I think that going down to it again, it's not about the what, it's about the meaning behind it. You know, and that's all up to interpretation, really, you know. What you thought when you said it.
So,
you know?
Mind reading is now a skill that the left claims to possess.
That's why it's useless, because mind reading is at its core.
There you go. Anyway, let's continue with the question and answer.
Key institution dealing with domestic violence. Police.
Oh, this is roughly where we stopped
in this country once
Saturday.
every 2 minutes. How do we get them to acknowledge and to change? And is smash the patriarchy the only?
Can you pick up again? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
The patriarchy.
Sorry?
She said something about violence, but can you just back up like 15 seconds to her question? I didn't quite get it.
I'm going to back up a bit more because it's not that easy with this program.
Racism is,
Here we go.
unquestionable. And if the question from Belinda was, how do we get them to acknowledge racism? Institutions, Jess, you've looked a lot at institutions and the work you're looking at. The police, a key institution dealing with domestic violence. Police, address a domestic violence incident in this country once every 2 minutes. How do we get them to acknowledge and to change? And is smash the patriarchy the only answer?
There's that. There is smashing the patriarchy. There's, I think the culture of the police is so deeply entrenched, and Naika's totally right to talk about the history of colonisation and what's happened particularly in Australia, and it is shared in many, many countries across the world. But what we've done here in Australia is we brought over a culture, in 1788 when we first started coming here, that was absolutely torn apart by domestic violence and child abuse. We brought that culture here.
Okay, so here it starts.
I find it hard to understand because you were typing. So I don't know, it's probably not like that on the stream, but your mic is very loud while you're playing back the audio.
Okay, well, I can play it again if you want to, but I'm not typing.
It's fine. It might just be on my side, it might be fine for the stream. It just might be a good idea when you're playing back that you mute yourself next time, But I found the starting point quite interesting. I think if I understood the question correctly, she said that the racism is already a given fact, and how do we get them to acknowledge that they are racist? Wasn't that like the gist of the question?
No, it gets even further than that. But let's replay it again.
Or just say it in your words. What do you think it is? I might have got it wrong.
Because I understood the fact that you couldn't hear it well. So if that's true for you, then that's probably true for the people in the stream as well. So let's play it again.
acknowledge racism.
It's a bit
Institutions,
louder
Jess,
now, so that
you've
should
looked a
help.
lot at institutions and the work you're looking at. The police, key
Well, the main thing is
institutions
you need to
dealing with
mute
domestic violence.
your mic or
Police,
something.
What, address a domestic violence incident in this country once every 2
Oh, you
years.
muted everything
How
now.
do we get them to acknowledge that change?
See, there is that problem. Yeah.
And is smash the patriarchy the
Yeah,
only
You have to
well,
mute
there's
it in
that,
OBS,
there
I
is
think.
smashing
I'm
the
not sure.
patriarchy. There's,
can't.
I think the culture of the police is so deeply entrenched.
Then don't type.
And Naoka's totally right to talk about the history of colonisation and what's happened particularly in Australia, and it is shared in many, many countries across the world. But what we've done here in Australia is we brought over a culture, in 1788, when we first started coming here, that was absolutely torn apart by domestic violence and child abuse. We brought...
Okay, so this is
Okay,
basically...
I got it.
Okay, so this is basically what you're saying. Australia didn't have domestic violence, didn't have child abuse. It came with the English. And everyone in the world, it started with the white man. And they're absolutely unironically saying that. What, you can't hear me? Oh, fucking hell, what the hell is going on now? You should be able to hear me.
No, they said they can hear. Stream can hear the video. That's what Michael Keller wrote. They can hear you. Stream, we hear only the video playback and Raven, nothing else. Oh, they can't hear you talk. Oh, that's a problem.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well,
But can't they hear me talk? Because you can hear me. I can see the sound going out, and I can hear you and the noise. So I don't know.
that's bad. Well, I don't want to repeat everything that Modwain says. So, Modwain, you need to solve it on your side. Have you got
I need to figure out.
Well, only audio issues. Modwain is very quiet. Video was good and you're loud. Okay, so Modwain, you're just very quiet. Maybe you just need to turn yourself up on the OBS.
No, I need to turn you guys down because I can't turn myself up.
Okay, do that then. Ludicrous can hear you anyway. He probably has better ears, Leprechauns can hear well.
So, how is the balance now, by the way?
Everything's okay, Modwain. Everything's okay, Michael says. I think they were just pulling your leg,
Oh, okay. See, that's unfair. That's being nice to me. Anyway, so here we have this woman who's going to tell us that basically domestic violence and child abuse is something that only happened in England. And
it was imported into Australia, right?
Into Australia. And I'm like, seriously, I'm not sure if Anxious is still with us, but I've read papers on domestic violence issues in Australia amongst the Aborigine communities, and it's pretty heinous. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing compared to anything I've read ever before. And I work in healthcare. I've seen and heard stories, and read about cases. But some of these Aborigine cases, fucking hell. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not blaming anyone, but yeah,
I think I already know what her counter argument would be. Well, the Aborigines have just copied it very well.
Well, yeah, so well that no one ever else has done it.
Yeah, they've surpassed their teachers.
Domestic there was no time in history that that domestic violence was considered a good thing. If a man would beat up his wife unreasonably, society would turn against him. Funny enough, if a man would be beaten up by his wife, society mocked him. So there is that. The idea of domestic violence ever being accepted in Western society is absolute bullshit. Anyway, so there we go. So you know it. White people feel guilty because you imported domestic violence into Australia. Let's see what else she has to say, shall we?
That culture here, we brought it to a nation of Indigenous Australians who'd lived here for 65,000 plus years, who had survived and thrived for that long because they knew what was required to keep intimacy and emotional relationships intact. What we did is we came here, we raped and abducted their women and girls. We instilled a system of patriarchy and racism. We then, when we raped and abducted their girls, when they had white babies, we abducted them. And then we legislated for about
What?
180 years to destroy their culture. Or to
Hold on, did you say when they had white babies?
Yeah.
How?
Because
How would they
apparent-
have white babies?
Apparently, their women got raped by white men and blah blah blah. And you know, the thing is, it's probably.
I don't buy it. I really don't buy it. I
I'm
mean,
willing to believe it happened maybe once or twice, or maybe it happened a few times. Let's be honest, 200 years ago, people weren't always the most well behaved. But
I mean, yeah,
the
that
Aboriginals,
it goes to this theory of that it was a nation of what is it, convicts, you know. Okay, I mean, yeah, if they shipped rapists and murderers or whatever to Australia, yeah, those
about
would have
to have
been,
some negative behavior.
yeah.
But let's be honest. They're talking about the Aborigines. In the
Yeah.
17th century, they still hadn't figured out the wheel. I don't want to be rude, but their life was so incredibly much better before the Europeans came.
But don't you know that the wheel was used as a torture instrument by medieval white people?
Yeah, no doubt. But it was also used as a transport thingy.
Ah, that doesn't matter.
No, but that's the whole thing, though. Look at these
Yeah, no.
poor
Yeah, they
poor
always
colored
pick and
people.
choose only the negative, don't you know? You always have to. They take these progressive types. They only take the negative. Like it's like with the recent article of the firemen coming back from the bushfires to abuse their wives. It's just really like, okay, they put out the fires, but they also come back and domestic violence. There's more domestic violence because, you know. And that's what you pick out.
But it's so ludicrous. I mean, okay, am I going to excuse everything that the English did when they came to Australia? Hell no. There are plenty of things they did wrong, but nothing good came of it. Damn.
Yeah.
And hi there, Renovatio. Anyway, let's continue. I mean,
Yeah.
But this whole idea of the noble savage, I never understood it. Have they no historical sense? Do they know what these people did to one another before the white man was there? This is true for Africa. This is true for Australia. This is true for America. These guys bashed each other's heads in before we came there.
But they have an advantage. They don't have written history of it, you see.
Yeah, so now they can pretend it never happened. But
Exactly.
that's not really true though, because we know from Africa, because there's a lot of written history. We know from South America, because there's lots of written history. But okay, Australia, no, not so much. And bon appetit, mate.
try to destroy
Sorry,
their culture
I forgot to
because we
mute.
thought that they were already doomed and we were almost doing them a favour. So what
How are we almost doing them a favor? They're fucking living in welfare countries now. And I'm not saying that they have a good time in Australia. I'm not saying the Aborigines have it perfect or whatnot. No more or no less than the other people, I think. But seriously, they have electricity, running water. None of these things come from Aborigine scientists. How do I know none of these things come from Aborigine scientists? Because they have none.
Keep going.
No, that's basically it. I mean, it's kind of like that black woman in South Africa talking at the university, how people still can't explain how some people can throw lightning bolts at other people. And no one can explain how they do it. Yeah, because they don't. You can't explain something that isn't real. But for these people, apparently, it's real. Anyway, let's
I
continue.
think we've come to now is, we imported the violence. there may have been violence in Indigenous cultures before we got here, but they lived by a very strict moral code.
Yes, the moral code was if we didn't like you, you'd be dead. Unfortunately, the white man didn't allow that. The whole concept of let's kill those who we disagree with suddenly became disallowed. It's weird though, isn't it?
Yeah, weird.
And we have had that culture of violence that has been totally unresolved in this country for over 200 years, and we have not made peace with it. And there's no way that you're going to change police without changing the community. Police are just people. They're people who live in Australia, and Australia has a very hard, long history of violence against Aboriginal women and girls and Aboriginal boys. And unless we resolve that and do some truth-telling around that, there's no chance that the police are going to be reformed.
Okay.
Aboriginal girls, Aboriginal women, and Aboriginal boys. Well, fuck, man. I mean, they're the ones who usually die, but who cares? Seriously.
But I think she has a point that police are just people. You know,
Yeah, that is
they
true.
are people.
Police are just people. That's. I'm not saying they don't say anything that isn't true, but everything else is nonsense. But yeah, the police are people too. Yeah, there is.
I think what she implies is that, Western society or Australian Western society is inherently a violent one, and so that's what the police force is now violent.
But the
I don't
thing
know.
is-
I mean,
The thing is, I can still remember that. What was it? I think it was just. I'm not sure before, or just after the Second World War. In Australia, they took away children from Aboriginal families and placed them with white Australian families. They did this to protect these children because domestic violence in these Aboriginal families was so common that a lot of kids were scarred for life. Now, obviously, the approach wasn't the best one, but they did so with their best intentions. Then again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, so you have that. And still, they pretend that, no, all domestic violence originates with the white man. And perhaps the white woman, but, well, no, surely not the white woman. It's weird. And the truly oppressed do not get to speak about it on media outlets. Well said, Renovatio. But oh, dare not to criticize them, because then you will get silenced. Oh, wait a second. Does that mean that I'm oppressed? Well, I guess in a way I am. I mean, I could lose my job because of this. You won't be able to lose your job over this, right? No, you're self-employed.
yeah, I might lose customers though.
You might lose customers. Ever noticed how they use people or person as a way of labeling someone as lesser than women? Indeed, Richard, it's quite true. And the Swiss government did the same to Roma children up until the 1970s. Same argument that were proven to be wrong in the early 1940s already. Well, yeah, that's the problem. I mean, taking the kids out of the domestic violence may seem like a good idea, but the question is, what causes domestic violence? This is something we need to study more. But, unfortunately, nearly all studies done prove that domestic violence starts with women, and that's a storyline they don't want you to remember. So, those studies disappear. Don't get me wrong, yes, 60% of the perpetrators of domestic violence is men, and 40% of the perpetrators of domestic violence, according to that same study, is women. 60% of the victims of domestic violence are women, and 40% of domestic violence victims are men. 70% of the domestic violence is started by women. That means that roughly half of the men fight back, but the other half doesn't. See, that's funny.
Oh, the internalized misogyny.
The domestic violence argument has been proven to be wrong. Yeah, no, I know it's wrong, mate. I know it's wrong, but they still did it to pretend that they were being helpful.
And the thing is that if if women do something bad, then it's not her fault, don't you know? There's
Yeah,
no
yeah, yeah,
agency
yeah.
there.
Today I read an article about a woman killing her 3 toddlers because
Oh
they were all
shit.
they were all 3 men, and she was worried that they would grow up to be rapists.
Okay, let me guess. No jail time.
I didn't get that far in the article because
All right.
and I mean I feel sorry for the woman somewhat because she was raped, so something bad did happen to her, but oh my god, her 3 children had nothing to do with that, and they
Oh, yeah.
got murdered by that mother, and she probably won't get any jail time. That's true. I didn't get that far into the article yet, but it's. But as soon as a man kills a child, no one looks at the motivation. No one asks
Oh,
what
yeah.
happened to the man. But as soon as a woman kills a child, well, the headline says 3 kids killed, and then the first 2 paragraphs are on how the woman is a victim.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But she's the one
It's
that
clearly
killed,
out of character for her.
but she's the one that killed the
Okay.
children.
Let's continue with the stream.
Yeah.
we?
So do we want them to be reformed, though? I think that's the question. What is it that I think the problem is we lack the imagination to think outside of the police.
Well, you're
So what
saying
is
you don't
it-
want any police at all, but if we're going to
No.
have police, don't we want them to be reformed?
So here's the thing. Do we or do we not want any police? And, well, this is the moderator of the show, so she's useless. And I'm not saying
Well, she said reformed. This one. Do we want the police to be reformed? Did she give the option of no police at all?
the other one says, do we want the police at all? She just said, do we
Oh
not
yeah,
want
interfering.
reform?
Yeah. Well, it's more like keep the police out of Aboriginal affairs. Maybe that's the point, that police cannot understand Aborigines, and we should handle our own
Yeah,
affairs.
no,
or something.
they said the same. Black Lives Matter said the same in Baltimore. What was it, 2 years ago? So the police started not patrolling certain black areas as much, and then people got killed more. So,
Of course.
you can't say we don't want the police because yada 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 blah blah blah, and then when the police is there, they are there for a reason. It doesn't make sense. Then stop giving the police a reason to be there. The majority of child homicides across the Western jurisdiction I have studied are committed by women, but the entire focus of our police and often legislation is to protect children from men. Renovatio, you are 100% correct. The chance of a child being killed by the father is nothing compared to the chance of a child being killed by the mother. Though it does happen that both parents may be in it together, though often then the father is not the biological father but the stepfather.
I think maybe protect girls from men. I think it's a little bit more gendered, you know. I think like a boy, who cares, you know? If he smacks the boy around, it's just a boy, you know.
Yeah, that's
think-
basically the storyline. Men are either the perpetrator or they're the ones who get killed. But they're never the victim. That's weird.
Yeah, and that extends to male children too. You see that society cares less. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, as I said, 3 toddlers killed by the mother because they may
Yeah.
become rapists. Anyway, should we still have a police force?
Please.
But
If that's the paradigm?
can they be?
Can the police be reformed?
Well, that's the
200
question. How do you
Yeah.
change an institution?
It's actually not
I
a question
I
that's
think
easy to
it's a
answer.
waste of time to try and change something like the police. It's truly a waste of time.
Okay, so can we change the police? I think it's a waste of time. Okay.
That's
am I
clearly
then to,
defeated.
am I then to infer that your idea is that we cannot change the police? Okay, so what then do we do? Well,
Been trying for years and years and years. It hasn't worked. So what are different ways of dealing with the things that we go to police for? So if it's, if it is,
Because we do go to police for help. We do go.
and that they don't help.
and I am sorry that Anertak isn't here, Anxious Aussie isn't here. Because let's be honest, people do go to the police, and the police indeed don't help. Look at the gangs going around in Melbourne, where there are gangs of youth, let's call them youth, attacking people and houses and businesses, and the police doesn't do much because they don't want to be called racist. Something like that happened in the UK too, by the way. But several thousand child rapes on, they are now finally starting to act.
I'm always amazed on how many pubic hairs they have to have gathered for this filter you're using.
No. Oh, come on.
It just looks like it.
Anyway, no need for police force. With a police force, feminists can't complain about the unsolved crimes, that no one is there to protect them from counterattacks as so. Don't be silly, Modwain. If they fix the police, then that would solve the issue, and they really don't want that. Well, there is that. Okay, abolish the police and see how the number of rapes and violence against women soars. When it occurs, let the women know it was the feminists who demanded it. Well, how many women have lost their job because feminists deemed their job part of the patriarchy? Feminism has nothing to do
Modwain,
with women.
I know the stream can hear your audio, but I'm just looking at the live picture here, and I only see your thumbnail.
You're only seeing my thumbnail? What do you mean?
Well, on the YouTube stream, there's no picture. It's just the thumbnail.
On the Hangout, you mean?
No, on the Hangout I see the live video. You're playing it back on the Hangout, but on YouTube I only see the.
Right. Did I see? Sometimes, yeah, I know what you're saying, and you are correct.
You're not sharing, mate.
I'm not sharing. Well, I'm sharing the sound, but not the image. Sorry, my good people. Then again,
So that's a bit dry for the audience.
Yeah, but maybe I shouldn't share these harpies.
I think you should, because it's really helpful to see them. Ah, that's better. Now it appears.
Yeah, there we go.
Why didn't the stream say so? Chat,
Well,
you are asleep at the wheel, guys.
Because they don't care, perhaps. On the YouTube stream,
they don't want to
it's
see
just
them.
the feminists. Yeah, we just the one background image. Anyway, let's continue. I am sorry I didn't share. I did share it last time, so it's really my mistake.
Oh yeah, last time was
Like
fine.
they-
Last time was fine. Let's just check now.
Yeah, no, it's
I
really my
hadn't
mistake.
I hadn't switched it to live mode here because I was afraid of feedback, and then I switched it to live and thought, oh, that's still the red-haired bint.
Yeah.
You know, Miss
Thunder.
Jew,
And
Miss Jew is a really good example. You know, she went for help and she ended up dying. You know, Auntie Tanya was
Miss Two.
she was drunk in public. You know, you would help someone normally. You know,
Okay, she was drunk in public, drunk and disorderly, violent, and she was taken by the police and died in custody. Problem, yes, but victim, hardly. Ah, there it is. Mental illness hair women with non-binary of color. There you go. Michael Keller. So now we know it's been a technical problem. We thought he didn't listen to just audio. It's not a technical problem. I just forgot it. So it's not really a technical problem. And we do not want to be accused of
in the IT world we call it a pepcake.
Oh, okay.
That's a problem exists between keyboard and computer.
Yeah.
there are going to be
It should be a health response, not a police response.
thousands
If you're
of
talking
people
about
who are drunk tomorrow, and they're going to be helped.
Of course.
So, but why
I
do we
think-
need to rely on them when we can build communities to do that work for ourselves?
Okay, Hannah?
Look,
So
I think
that's
what's
definitely-
missing from this.
Yeah, go on.
I think that's definitely the idea, isn't it? Build communities that work for what she really wants. She wants the idea of segregation. I think at its core, it means, okay, why don't we have an Aboriginal police force or whatever we call this thing, of purely Aboriginal people policing the Aborigines, and that's a deeply segregationary kind of apartheid kind of thought, if you think about it.
Well, it's actually one worse. Basically, because what she's talking about is what they tried in Baltimore. When Black Lives Matter complained about the police going into certain black neighborhoods, the police didn't go. And what happened? Crime skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm.
And what she's now
Yeah,
advocating
because
for...
it's not that easy, It's not that easy to on the spot kind of educate like a police force. It's not that easy. It's not like,
Yeah,
oh
but
yeah, you're gonna do the policing tonight,
Yeah, well, no one is going to do the policing because now the community themselves will take care of themselves. Yeah, and they're so good at taking
Yeah,
care of themselves
basically, it's
that the
not there.
police still has to come regularly.
Well, no, you could. I mean, you could say, okay, we're trying it. Let's assign maybe the elders or some certain peoples. They are the designated like watchmen of tonight. But you still have to educate these people. You still have to kind of teach them, how to handle a violent situation. It's not
Yeah.
that easy. It is a job.
True.
It's a highly like I don't know,
Yeah,
not
you
highly
need,
skilled, but it's a highly trained job. Let's say.
you need skill for it. That's true. That's true. It is quite amazing. But here we are advocating for no police because society can do it better without police. But
I'm so looking forward to the red-haired, what's her name, Mona,
yeah, we'll get there.
to her,
We'll get there.
unless she already said it. I'm not sure.
The thing is, why am I doing the whole stream? Is because everyone took a few clips out, but
Yeah.
there are more stuff in there that, in my humble opinion, is even worse. Because here we have someone advocating for no police because society can take care of itself.
No,
Totally
I don't think so. I think what she really thinks is we are going to build our own police force. We're not going to call it police.
No. She doesn't want police. She wants society to help each other, stand up for each other, etc., etc., etc. She believes in the idea if I'm nice to you, you're going to be nice to me. Everyone's going to be nice. The sun will always shine. Butterflies will always be around.
Star Trek. It's
Yes.
Star Trek.
Well, it's even worse than Star Trek because in Star Trek you still have the odd individual that isn't nice.
Yeah.
And then they have a police force to deal with it. Anyway, let's continue.
And they're going to be helped.
Of course.
So, but why
I
do we need to rely on them when we can build communities to do that work for ourselves?
Okay, Hannah?
Look, I think what's missing from this whole conversation is truth-telling. Indigenous and First Nation issues are not sexy, and there's no currency politically to take them on in a real and meaningful way.
But at the same time, people also like to lie about these things. Because domestic violence in the Aborigine community is pretty high.
Yeah. I think that whole truth, I'm sorry, but that whole term truth-telling, for me, it smacks of woo. Really woo, it's just like, yeah, truth-telling, yeah, because we can only tell the truth. We're pure beings of light and purity.
But
that's not how the world works.
A moment ago, the other, the one with the mustache was talking about how there was a drunk woman who died in police custody. And I'm like, okay. And here, this is another one who says, well, we're truth-telling and we have to have a community and blah, blah, blah. Wait a second. The truth is that there was a drunk woman who was belligerent and died in custody. She didn't get there because the police thought to themselves, oh, wait, that's an Aboriginal woman. Let's take her down. But they only cherry-pick the parts of the truth they want. Oh, she died in the police cell, therefore the police is bad. She got arrested for being drunk and disorderly. Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Yeah, but can you imagine that if you have a community where women can walk around drunk and disorderly openly, what do you think men do? Do you think they'll drink less than women? So you have a community where drunk and disorderly behavior is acceptable. No, but it's true. They have a society where drunk and disorderly is acceptable. I'd rather have a police force trying to make sure that people don't misbehave than drunks trying to make sure that drunks don't misbehave. And yes, child abuse and domestic violence is ridiculously high amongst the Aboriginal families. But yeah, you can't say that. You have to remember, it's all about truth telling. Well, the truth we want you to tell, not the other one, obviously.
In order to, because police behaviour is a reflection and expression of the values of this country, and I agree with Jess that truth has never been told, and if we are genuinely about recognition, reconciliation, whatever the language we use that is relevant to First Nations people, and affording dignity and respect, we need to begin by telling the truth.
And telling the truth means we're not going to tell what actually happens, we're going to tell you what we want you to realize. So in this pure example...
Yeah, keep going. She repeated it twice. She must elaborate what she thinks the truth is. Give her more rope to hang herself,
You
please.
think, well, here we go. I'll give her that.
And we need to stop the doublespeak. On the one hand, we appoint a Minister for Indigenous Affairs, and then at the same time, we afford them absolutely disrespect and disregard for events like Uluru closure. So this doublespeak about, on the one hand, we claim, yet those claims are hollow.
Okay, we have...
Okay, did she explain...
Did you know Uluru? What is Uluru?
Oh, I don't know. Something bad that happened.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't have an opinion on some event, obviously.
Well, but she came... Well, the other woman came with an event, a woman being arrested drunk and disorderly. Drunk and disorderly comes quite often within the stories of the Aborigines. And then we talk about truth-telling. Okay, the truth is, if these people wouldn't do drunk and disorderly, they wouldn't be nicked. If these people didn't have so much domestic violence within their community, people wouldn't be trying to help them with their domestic violence problem. These truths are being ignored. So we need to begin by telling the truth, but only our truth.
There is a rock called Uluru. Uluru. I don't know if there's any Australians on the stream. But it's a living cultural landscape of which is considered sacred to the Yankuni Tatiara and Piatjanyanyatjara people.
Yeah, indeed.
So I don't know, maybe some transgression.
Yeah, probably.
There's quite a few kind of holy sites in Australia that are considered to be desecrated by the whiteys.
Well, obviously, because if anything bad happens, it's whitey. I wonder if these people would rather live around that holy rock than live in air-conditioned houses and having running water and stuff like that. But that's unfair of me because that's an unfair comparison. But in all fairness, what is not unfair is the fact that these people often have drugs, alcohol problems, and we're not to talk about that. And indeed, Daz, they just want to talk about symbolic issues. It's not about the reality of things. It's about, okay, what can we pretend to make a deal out of?
So much to get through tonight. I'm going to move us on. Remember, if you hear any doubtful claims on Q&A, let us know on Twitter, and keep an eye on the RMIT ABC Fact Check, the conversation website, for the results.
The funny thing is, Q&A took down this talk. I had to look to find it, and I didn't find it on ABC. ABC took it down because of the incredible amount of questions being raised because of this one. And wouldn't it be interesting to give one of these women a truth theorem and ask her some questions? Yeah, that would be very interesting, Michael Keller. Probably also illegal, but still. Let's continue.
The next question comes from Alia Ahmad.
Former US President Barack Obama recently said that people who are politically woke need to get over themselves because they're just being judgmental online and not affecting any change. For many women and gender diverse people of color, online is one of the few safe spaces to actually speak out about injustices within our community and more broadly. What effect do you think that Mr. Obama's words have on these already marginalized voices, and what would you say in response?
Okay, before we're going to let them answer, on these marginalized voices. There isn't a Western country that doesn't have a gay pride or pride parades for sexuality, where gender dysphoria is now no longer being discussed. Sorry, I couldn't find the word. It's no longer discussed as being a negative word. And yes, I have the video downloaded. What are you on about?
It's okay, don't worry about it.
Okay.
It's a
Anyway,
technical question.
so she's talking about the concept that people can't speak their mind because they're people of color, LGBT, etc., etc., etc. When these people are so protected that you can't speak out against them, because when you do, you're an ist and an ope and a God knows what else.
Yeah, that's the problem with protected classes. They actually, that concept actually generates bad behavior in spades.
Yeah, it does. And funny enough, this is what Barack Obama said. Guys, you got to stop with the woke behavior, because you know what? Those people who are woke are still a fringe. And the majority, the silent majority, is actually being turned off because of this bullshit. But yeah, no, we don't want to think of it like that. It's beyond weird. But the answers they are going to give are really... And yes, that's there. Well, obviously. How dare you say something I might not agree with? Are you aware that you have to be careful because I'm easily offended? Yep, there you go.
I completely and utterly disagree with Barack Obama.
No.
I go online exactly to tell people to fuck off when they attack me.
And at this point, I will.
And this is funny. She tells people to fuck off.
What did she say? She goes online exactly to tell people to what?
She goes online to tell people to fuck off when they attack her.
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
now the funny part.
Well, I think 95% of people on Twitter go. They go to social media to have a good old fight.
Well, probably. But here's the funny
Fuck
thing.
off.
Here's the funny thing, though. She goes online to tell people to fuck off.
Right.
She's
Okay.
actually
It's her
looking
right.
for a fight.
Yeah. Well, that's her right. If she gets gratification out of that,
Yeah,
that's her right. I mean, I wouldn't actually take her seriously for generating any policies, though. It's just like, okay, you're having a fight. It's just like, okay, you want to shout at people.
seriously, she has no problem to say on, in this case, Australian national television, but she also put this whole thing on her YouTube channel. She has absolutely no problem basically saying, I go out looking for a fight. And still she blames
I think
the
that's
other.
perfectly okay.
Looking for a fight is perfectly okay?
Yeah, I think it is. It's okay. It's just looking for a fight and then demanding to be taken seriously. That's a different story.
Fair enough.
Yes, you're looking for a fight. Okay, you have a fight. You're like a child. You're kind of emoting.
Yeah.
That's not really something. That's not somebody I would say. Okay, now make some legislation. Now we're gonna ask your opinion so that we can make some rules.
Yeah, okay,
no, that's
fair
just
enough.
like emotional outbursts.
Yeah, fair enough. fair
Okay,
enough.
throw a tantrum.
But okay, she had more to say, obviously. So let's
Yeah,
continue. See
go on then.
Will
known
utter a
for
language
it.
warning on the program.
And
Remind our
yeah.
guests.
No, honestly, it's, this idea of respectability, this idea of civility, this idea of unity, all of these words, decorum, who invented those words? Those words were invented by white men for the benefit of other white men in systems and institutions that were always designed to be for white men.
And here's the thing.
That's amazing.
Behavior,
You first.
being correct to each other, being nice to each other, being not going out of your way to be offensive to one another is just something white men do. So
Well,
is she now
I-
basically saying that any non-white culture is seriously degenerative because
It's-
they don't care for one another?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's I heard the quote a few times, and my answer would always have been, well, you shut the fuck up, you stupid bint, or something like that, because obviously you don't want decorum, so I'm going to give you a dose of that. No decorum, no politeness. But this is the first time I heard it for the fourth time today. This is the first time I hear her say it was invented in order to talk to other white men. So I think the big qualification she makes, she narrows it down and she says all this stuff is only reserved from one white man to another white man. So the whole decorum, the whole the politeness, it doesn't apply to people in the out group.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. That's the way she sees it, because okay, we are not being treated that way. I mean, obviously she's highly deluded, but but still, like that's the premise,
She is very much a supremacist. She is a very
yeah.
and she feels that okay, people need to behave well, but it's only because of white societies, because black societies probably never had that. Civilization itself is a white patriarchal product, apparently. And she's all right to point it out because she's not a racist. Well, she's a racist to everyone who's white, but in the meantime, she's also saying, basically, every non-white culture is a failure because they don't care about each other.
But it reminds me a little bit of, like, she seems to be stuck in this way. You could see like early film footage, black and white film footage from like post-Victorian, like pre like industrialization times, where you see these English imperialists feeding razor blades to crocodiles, making fun of the natives, that kind of thing. That we're this very highly sophisticated society that's very polite to each other, and we're treating everybody else, the black people, like filth because they're not civilized. And she has this, and she brought it into the now, and I think it's just very, very different to reality.
It is
It's just not like that. It's just not like that. Oh, I see a black person at, let's say I'm at university, and I see a black guy, and I just immediately call him like.
Well, I like the way Renovation
boy or something,
I like the way Renovation said it. The white men also form many of the laws and norms which ensure that women like her will not be stoned to death for opening her mouth against the people she wants to have killed. And let's be honest, there are still cultures in this world where she can't speak her mind. Funny enough, she comes from one of those cultures where both her parents are filthy rich.
And I think that's what fuels her delusion, is that she might have. I mean, I know she's from a very high class background. She probably never really experienced, like personally experienced this thing, but she might have heard of it, by like lower class women in. She's from Egypt, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Egyptian kind of culture, and that's fairly patriarchal, fairly chauvinist, So, but I think she just brought it with her into Australia, and she's just like, everybody's like that.
Well, she lives in
you can't
America,
hide it. It's endemic,
She lives in America because she got arrested in Egypt. They don't like her in Egypt. I wonder why.
Yeah. I wonder.
And they weren't designed for women like you and me and so many others. Like you said, people of color and gender diverse people.
Yeah, because it's perfectly all right in the Western world to be completely degenerative towards women of color. Oh, wait, it's not? Damn! But she just said it's okay. Weird are those guys.
It's really like, that's an old feminist kind of thing, that if they say they want the same treatment for women, but if you treat them the same, that they see that as a real slight, because what they really want is they want to be treated better.
Yeah.
They want the difference, and that's for them the same, because they have all this baggage. It's just like, I'm doing all this. I have so much suffering, so you have to treat me better than just.
How dare you
and
not?
that's equality then.
Yeah, how dare you not treat me better because I have years of oppression. Hundreds of years
royalty,
of
like.
oppression. Yeah, but you're only 20 years old. Doesn't matter. Thousands of years of oppression. Bullshit.
Exactly.
Thing is, men and women throughout history didn't have it easy. And the whole
It's that
idea-
whole concept, isn't it, Modwain? The whole concept of reparations is that it's just that treat us better than other people because now it's
Yeah.
our turn.
Yeah. But the funny thing is that it's kind of funny, but when we look at reparations, and this can be within the feminist movement, this can be within the black movement, who are they asking reparations from? Well, they're asking reparations from the very people who made it possible for them to be talking like this. Because let's be honest, if we look at feminism, where is feminism the strongest? In the Western world. Where is feminism the most needed? Well, let's say China, Middle East, African countries. Well, it's not big there. I wonder why. Because there it's actually a problem. Why is it there a problem and in Europe it isn't? Because in Europe we are a feminized society. Unfortunately so, because this is one of the causes of the, disintegration of our Western world. But yeah, okay, there is that. But you cannot mention it, because when you mention it, it's no, that's not true. No, it's white men are the problem. It's the same with the reparation for the black man. Who were the slave traders? Well, there hasn't been a slave sold to a white slaver that wasn't caught by a black slave trader. Because the white slavers didn't go into Africa to capture slaves. They stayed on the coast and bought the slaves. But yeah. No, not even the tradition.
By the way, just to give you a heads up, Modwain, I'm gonna split in 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So, like midnight, I want to see that McAfee interview.
I have no idea who McAfee is, to be honest.
He made a famous antivirus
Right.
software called McAfee,
Okay.
and he applied for. He wanted to become president in 2016, I think.
Really?
Yeah. He's a really crazy kind of millionaire guy, but he knows very much about the whole problematic with cyber security and spying and all that, and so I think he would have been uniquely qualified,
Okay.
from a certain aspect. So I'm gonna watch that. I want to watch that live interview with him.
Anyway, let's continue with this one.
Yeah.
They never imagined us in those spaces, and then we show up and we just ruin it for them. And so those who abide by the system, and Barack Obama was part of the system and remains part of the system. I also disagree with his wife when she says when they go low, we go high. No, I fucking don't. If you go low, I'm gonna come for you. So no, I do not
Yes, because violence is a good thing.
have the
Yeah,
luxury or the
She's powerful
Yeah.
in her mind.
Powerfully insane.
And I'm sure she could hire a few bodyguards that do the fighting for her.
Probably, yeah. She's definitely
Male.
not going to do it herself. I mean,
Okay, keep going. I want her to elaborate on this.
Okay.
privilege to sit there and be civil with people who do not acknowledge my full humanity. I refuse, number one. Number two, there are so many voices who have found their platform on social media finally, after being the gatekeepers refused to let us in for such a long time.
And I'm curious.
That's an epic comment. There's a lot of hair on tonight's panel.
Yeah, well, that too. But where were women denied access to social media platforms?
Was it media?
Well, that she's talking about
I was just
platforms.
she's just talking about the spaces, right?
Yeah.
Not just media. I think what she really
Okay, well,
believes, what she really means, it's code talk for. Well, I don't really want to take part in the minesweeping team or the cleaning the gutters, but I would very much like a seat on the table with the other CEOs.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
But
The top.
more than 100. Well, roughly 100% of all men are not CEO.
Yeah, sure.
So
But in her mind, these don't matter. You see?
Yeah, because
I mean,
facts and
there
reality.
is what they say is nobody is poor, or at least nobody who is mentions worthy is poor. You see, only notable people are notable people. So the ones that that you can read articles in magazines about, these are noteworthy people, not these like shoe shine boys. They don't count. They don't matter.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is bourgeois. I mean, it's upper class. This one, like that's. I mean, I think that feminism is probably 90% to 95% middle to upper class women. There's no working class women in feminism, really. Very, very few.
Yeah, it's scary to me. Anyway, let's continue because we've
I mean,
only
I
done
say
5 minutes.
I include myself because I'm kind of in and out. But there are people who have never had any platform. I'm thinking of young black feminists in the United States.
How?
Oh yeah. That now there's a whole rant coming. I've seen this, and she's very honest. She doesn't say women. She always uses the term feminist. There's young black feminists. There's young this feminist. There's that feminist. This feminist. It's not about women. It's really about her political affiliation.
But even that's not true.
Where the grievance lies.
But even that's not true. Let's look at, for example, intersectionality. Intersectionality sprouted from the mind of Bell Hooks. If I'm not mistaken, she was a black feminist.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, a lot of feminism today comes from that concept. And here she's telling me that black women have nothing to say, or sorry, black feminists have nothing to say. Fucking hell. Seems that people have listened to them way too much.
I think that what really irks her is, yeah, they have a lot to say in woke culture, but what they want 100% agreement in wider society. What really irks her is that there is only 10% or 15% feminists, and that the rest are me. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's the real problem. That it's not.
You're probably right.
It has to be systemic. It has to be mandatory. Everybody has to be it.
Yeah, you're probably right on that one. Well, let's continue.
Indigenous feminists in the United States and Canada, because I move back and forth between the US and Canada. There is one Indigenous woman in Canada who every day tweets about missing and killed Indigenous women in Canada. Nobody has bothered to find out what happened to them. In the United
No one?
That's such a fucking lie. There were whole committees on this, and there's investigation, and they don't even mention the men, the indigenous men in Canada, or what are they called? They're called Aborigines as well. Yeah, I'm not sure.
No, I'm not sure what they're called, but they are.
But the same amount of guys were
Nation,
killed and are missing, and they don't do investigations on them at all.
Yeah.
No. They're
But
not mentioned, you know. It's like Boko Haram all over, you know.
Yes,
it's like,
that's what I
oh
wanted to
yeah,
say.
women, girls were abducted, and the men the boys were burned, you know.
Yeah, they were just
who
killed.
gets suppressed? The girls.
Yeah, I mean, look at how bad girls have it. Boys are getting murdered, and girls are getting abducted.
They don't count. Well, at least their suffering was short, right?
Yeah, well, you don't know. But yeah, it's all women are the victim, and no one pays enough attention to the female victims. Well, men were the victim too. What do you mean men were the victim too? Well, there were men victim. No, there weren't.
Inuit.
Yes, there were. So yeah, Inuit. Yeah, okay.
United States, really incredibly successful campaigns have happened online because we refuse to be civil to those who don't recognize our humanity. So for those who say, be civil, for those who say be polite, I have an entire chapter on the political importance of profanity. And I remind them of a Ugandan feminist called Dr. Stella Nyanzi, who is currently in prison in Uganda because she wrote a poem on Facebook wishing that the mother of the dictator of her country had poisoned him, that her birth canal had poisoned him during birth.
Yeah, because let's wish a kid to...
That's super relevant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Uganda is just so close. It's just around the corner to Australia, really.
Really, yeah.
I mean, it's
same culture.
Practically a province. It's practically an Australian province.
Yeah.
And
So much white supremacy.
I'm sure
there as
Ugandan
well.
warlords are very, very similar to Australian politicians, aren't they?
Very much. It's very much white supremacy. 100% white supremacy. But even then, I mean, you're telling that you wish that a woman's uterus would have killed her unborn child. And this is something we should find to be acceptable? Anyway, yeah. The vileness of this woman is out of the whole group, and the rest of them are stupid too, but this one, she's dangerous.
I think she's just she's just highly deluded, you know. She's like
Well-
she thinks she's dangerous, but I think that she's just like
No.
she's like a clown, you know.
She is, but
And
people
I
like
think
that-
she's probably the main reason why the whole thing was taken down, because
She was.
you know it's just
She
very
was.
hard to take seriously, you know.
She was. But there's a reason she can't live in Egypt anymore. And she pretends she pretends it's something to do with white men. Funny enough, there aren't a lot of white men in power in Egypt, you know? So yeah, there is that. Anyway, let's continue.
And when she was taken to court and during her sentencing, she was videotaped in because she's known for her profanity. She stood there in the video, she took off her top, she jiggled her breasts, and she said, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you."
Oh, that must have been a really kind of elaborate. No, what's the word when somebody's really good with words?
Yes.
Elaborate.
No, eloquated. Great.
Eloquent, a very eloquent moment there, and maybe like if you had a debate club of women, you could have. I heard Alison Tiemann from the Honey Badgers talking about it like this. So all these women and all jiggle their wrists, and who has the biggest or the best jiggle wins the argument. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're not doing yourself any favors there, Mona.
No, but she actually thinks that she's making a good point, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, she thinks.
You know what? You may have been arrested for the most inappropriate reason, but if you do that in court, I'm sorry, we're done talking.
Yeah, but it's pandering really, because it's just it only really shows that there's a real feeling of entitlement, you know, that okay, I can now behave really, I can really misbehave because I've earned it, you know, because I had so many. It's very type what's it, cluster B personality. It's very, you work in mental health, you probably have a you know, it's narcissistic, you know.
Yeah, I have the right to do this because I disagree with what you do, and therefore I must be right and you must be wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mona, I talked to you about this. Okay, you're watching. That's three.
I disagree with Barack Obama. I agree with Stella Nyanzi.
You're watching Q&A live from Melbourne with a panel of outspoken feminists.
I'm really. I mean, yeah, it's a colorful picture, and maybe, you know, it's entertaining, but I question some of the applause. You know, that got a rousing applause because at least it was entertaining, you know.
well,
Jiggling breath.
In all fairness, and this is something we know from Q&A themselves. Maybe I should have picked it up, but the audience is about 50% men, 50% women. And all of them are ideologically inclined to believe these women.
100% woke, 100% woke.
Well,
you know what it reminded me of? A little anecdote from, you know, James Dean, Jimmy Dean. He used to go, he'd go on a party or something, and he'd just go in there and he'd just go to everybody and say, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, you know. And it's this youthful thing, you know. Yes, you can definitely. I allow you to do it because you're James Dean, right? It's Jimmy Dean after all. It's like a legend, but it's this thing like, yeah, we want society to be a little lenient with us because we are really just youthful rebels, and it gets a little bit old, you know. It's like, yeah, you're young, you don't know any better, you know.
Yeah, but it's more like we want society to have certain rules,
but not for us.
But not for us. And those rules should be very strict, but not for us.
But the idea behind that is that I have agency, but I'm not really responsible. I'm deep down, I'm not responsible for my actions. Deep down, I'm just a youth. I'm not an adult.
Yeah.
Deep down, right?
And that's the problem with feminism. It's doing everything it can to take away agency from women. And this is also why there are so many women who are so much against feminism. Anyway, we're going to get a new question. Shall we do a new question or?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
We're staying with this issue of protest. Our next question is from Joss Tate.
Scott Morrison is talking again about cracking down on protesters and boycotts. But when citizens' democratic rights are progressively degraded, what avenues are left for those citizens to affect political change, at least in between elections?
Okay, this is very interesting. There is a difference between protests and what this woman now calls protests. Because it's not about people protesting, it's about people being disruptive.
I think it's just an excuse for Antifa doing its Antifa thing, isn't it?
True.
Smashing windows,
Yep.
all that bullshit. But I haven't got enough. I'm just assuming I haven't got enough context, so I don't know.
No,
Maybe continue.
we're talking about, for example, Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah. Sitting on a train and stopping it from moving, commuting because
that was in
I'm
England.
better than you.
That was in England, but certain stuff like that. In Australia, there were, I think it was in Sydney, that they blocked several main drive-throughs through the city.
Oh shit! The whole road, yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah,
protesting,
people were
that's
pissed
just-
because they needed to get to work, right?
or home. Yeah.
Or
And
home.
that's not protesting. That's being a nuisance.
And the last question.
Yeah,
but
that's being an
for this
asshole.
one-
Yeah, pretty much. Where you are, there you are.
And if you don't know, Scott Morrison's our Prime Minister.
Yes. Well, as far as I can see, he was upset that climate change organizers were causing grievous harm to industries that are polluting the planet. I mean,
He was very upset. He talks about a new breed of radical activism.
Yeah,
Is it a new breed?
Hardly. And I mean, the whole discussion frame seemed almost absurd, you know, that he would accuse these young climate change protesters of being selfish by disrupting a teeny weeny bit of the corporate profits.
Even if it were just
So
a
it's
teeny
harm,
bit,
harm versus pollution, right? So what's worse?
I would say harm.
Yeah, me too. Because the pollution is still a theoretical concept. Sorry, it's still a fairly theoretical concept, especially in the mouth of those who do the protesting. They don't feel anything. They don't feel any of the harm.
No.
They don't.
Well,
They have their hot water. They have their central heating, and I'm sure it's powered by liquid by mineral oil.
Yep.
Which shouldn't be in my mind now. I'm at the point now. I always felt bad for not having a central heating here in my house that's oil powered. But if you think about it, oil is the only really fully transportable energy source. So it's very good for cars. You cannot power a car by coal. You can't.
Well, you can. No, you can.
So I feel kind of vindicated now, firing my house, like warming my house with coal and wood.
Yeah.
Because you can't burn that. You can't make plastic from it. But mineral oil, very much so. You should not burn mineral oil. If you can if you can heat your house some other way, because it's a waste,
But in all
But anyway,
fairness,
I'm just saying that these people who are high on the protest scale, they all have mineral oil central heating. They all have it.
but it is possible to drive a car on charcoal or wood.
Take an electric car.
No.
You could
No. You can have a combustion car,
Yeah.
but you need a big contraption because this is something.
I haven't seen it. I mean, if that's something you could develop and put it into mass, assembly belt kind of mass, what's it called? Manufacturing, right?
The Germans actually developed the technology more or less during the Second World War. We know it works.
Well, it hasn't. I find it very doubtful. It's very hard to, you don't really want to go to a coal bunker and shovel coals into your car. You just want to, get the nozzle and fill it in.
Not coal, charcoal or wood.
Or whatever. The energy density of a petroleum spirit is way higher.
Oh yeah.
So you have 50 liters, and that's maybe the equivalent of maybe half a ton of coal.
No,
So you have all that extra weight you have to carry around with you.
I know. You're completely correct, but it is possible. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just that it's very inefficient.
Dreadfully inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
But
anyway, so
idea...
I mean, my starting point was this whole thing about sacrifice, that and harm and pollution. That pollution is so much harm, and I kind of doubt it. I don't think that's sort of like the CO2 kind of, that's where it goes. This whole global warming hoax kind of thing. That's really such a big harm for society. I doubt it. It's not proven.
I like Renovatio though. We should power our entire Western society with feminist bullshit. It is abundant and there appears to be an endless supply.
That's true. If you could burn stupidity, right?
But indeed, Michael Keller, during the Second World War, cars had been modified to run on coal as well. They didn't go fast, but it worked. Same as, Anyway, so I'm not the only one who says that it's true. There you have it.
I have 10 more minutes.
That are responsible for the plunder of the planet. Plus, to say that exercising our rights as consumers in a capitalist society is threatening is frankly ridiculous.
But
that's not true. That's not rights as consumers. As a consumer, you can say I don't take a product.
Yeah.
But you cannot say I'm going to disrupt a person from using a product or disrupt a person from creating a product. That's not what a consumer does.
No, you don't have the right to tell other people what to do.
Yeah. You can only abstain. You can maybe suggest to other people, okay, don't buy this product, or you cannot buy the product, but you can't just disrupt the product and say, oh, you can't make this product anymore.
Yeah. And the whole idea that the whole world is coming to an end. You know what? On my main channel, I have been making a few videos kind of trying to explain why that's a load of crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure how good I am at explaining it, but... you've seen one or two.
Yeah, pretty good.
Anyway, let's continue.
Hannah? Again, I think this is part of a bigger conversation and an ideology of a government who is moving towards censoring everybody and masquerading around a whole host of different, civil liberties, the erosion of civil liberties, and now criminalising protests.
But that's the thing, though, and this is funny. If we look at one group in the world at this point in time that's trying to silence other groups, we're not thinking about governments. We're thinking about the woke cultures. And the argument here is not we don't want people protesting. The argument is we don't want people disrupting society. Mm-hmm. But here she is pretending, see, we're not allowed to protest. No, you're perfectly allowed to protest. You're not allowed to disrupt other people's day. And somehow, that's unfair.
No, they will always move the goalpost. There's always post hoc rationalization. When I hit you, that's not violence, it's just self-defense.
Yeah. Yeah, everything they do is self-defense.
Yeah.
And the world will end in 10 years anyway, so just beat the system.
Yeah, exactly. We're just struggling for survival. It's like we are just like drowning people who take others down with us.
Yeah.
And that goes to the whole idea of agency and responsibility. I'm not responsible for my action. Look what you made me do.
Yeah. oh, you are so unfair to me. You're so unreasonable. Stop hitting yourself. Stop
Yeah.
hitting yourself whilst
Yeah,
I
exactly.
hit you with your hand.
Why did you make me shoot you?
Yeah, that's the whole argument. Let's continue.
I want to take the opportunity and talk about climate change because I think it's been led by extraordinary young people.
Agreed.
Yes, and extraordinary young people know everything about the climate, obviously. That's why I can give you articles that are more than 100 years old telling us how the world is going to end. And I can give you articles... Sorry, go on.
Just extraordinarily gullible people as well.
Yeah. No, but I have to admit, it's something I picked up not too long ago, so to speak. I have found articles dating back to the turn of the 20th century talking about how the world will end in 20 years. This is before the First World War, mind you. So it had nothing to do with what First World War happened. But they were already talking about, well, sea will rise. The sea will rise so much, whole countries will disappear. Not a single country has disappeared since the first time they said so. And every single time since then. Yeah, but this time is different. Why is it different? Because this time it will happen in 10 years. Yeah, but they said this 10 years ago too. And it didn't happen then. Yeah, but that's why this is different. Oh? Yeah, it's different because this time it will happen. Yeah, but that's what they said last time too. Yeah, but this time it's different. Okay, I don't see how it's different. Because this time it is true. Seriously, circular logic.
Looks like I don't have to go leave at midnight. The fuckers streamed it early. They already streamed. The interview is already online. It was an hour. Was streamed 4 hours ago. For fuck's sake.
4 hours ago. You could have
4
watched
hours
it
ago.
already, man.
I could have watched that before the stream.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's okay.
The 90s
That means
climate
I'm not gonna run
reboot.
off on you then, Modwain.
That's okay. You're welcome to stay. Michael Keller, it's
Yeah.
not even the 1990s climate panic because it really goes back to the
The
turn
reboot.
of the 19th century. We're talking about 1890. But
All
yeah,
right.
the whole climate scare thing is so fucking old. It's amazing.
Well, the whole thing about the end of the world is nigh is you can see it in the life of Brian, you know.
Oh yeah, true that. Anyway, let's continue.
Loud young people who don't have other avenues.
And
of
we
got
older
act.
people
They
need to
cannot
join them.
vote.
But they don't have other avenues. They can't vote, and they can't. Oh, I'm sorry. That this bint was like, oh, we need to. The one on the left, sorry, the blonde one, the one with short hair, was like, oh, we need to join them. No, we need to figure out what is true and what isn't true.
It's a little bit ironic that that's 7 women talking on primetime TV, you know, about how they don't have any choice, you know. It's just like,
Yeah.
and being probably broadcasted to millions of people, you know, just we poor people, you know. So ironic.
True.
They cannot vote. They are now being criminalised for protesting.
They're not being criminalized for protesting. They're criminalized for the way they are protesting. If they stand around
You're
the
talking about
streets-
who cannot vote? Sorry, is that young people? Is it?
Yeah, young people. Yeah.
Well, they
They
cannot
can
vote.
vote.
I mean, I don't mind. Let them vote, but let them pay tax for a year first. Taxes for a year or two first. You know?
Fair point. Did the left, which just
You know, it's like, let's say you have your 16-year-old and you make them dinner, and then you say, "Hold on, before you eat, let me just take 20% of your plate. That's tax now. Oh, you didn't make this.
yeah, well, 20%.
then I have to take 40%.
Hey, on the same sure. This is more than 20%.
Yeah.
Oh fuck, guys! I need to fast bio break. I'm sorry. I tried to stretch it. I can't hold on. I'll be right back. Which also means that, Real Raven, you got to keep him company.
I have the floor. Let me see. Did left witch just interrupt right witch? Unfortunately, I cannot hit the pause or play button on Modwain's desktop because you know, he shares it from his end. But what I found interesting, that you see that a lot with that sort of political class and feminists, especially, like I said earlier, they're usually middle to higher class, is that they will invoke other people they will say, but this person has it so bad, and the poor, they will always talk on behalf of other people and how their plight is, and then they're going to take via osmosis, they'll take on this oppression as their own. It's funny how that works, you know. Yeah, I may be rich and I have a designer suit on, and my haircut costs $120 or whatever, and I'm talking on national television to 10 million people. But look at this oppressed person, and and I'm just like her because Jenna. That's how that works. It always constantly comes in. It's just like, oh, woe is me, because this person, and I'm part of that club.
Yeah,
and I'm more believable through these victim points that I absorb via being in that class.
Yeah,
it's so weird. It's
I
don't understand why how mainstream, like the normal audience, doesn't actually get that. You know, it's always this, yeah. You have to be compassionate. You know, you have to be compassionate. You have to suffer with me through this person that I mentioned that suffers or suffered 200 years ago. That's why I'm so poor.
Well, yeah.
Michael, I am talking about these, which I think these haircuts, once you hit the wall, it will be expensive, you know.
Well, I have to admit, I haven't spent $120 for a haircut combined in the last 20 years. So
for all your haircuts, yeah.
All the haircuts in the last 20 years haven't cost me $100.
Well, you have a personal slave who does it for you.
No, I just don't cut my hair.
And let it grow.
I can wash it, I can brush it, that's okay.
And it falls out.
And eventually, well, I have a lush set of hair. So yeah. I meant to type terribly, not terrible. But the letter works as well. Terribly oppressed women, yeah, well.
Okay, let's continue.
Yeah.
MPs and governments are not listening to them. So I think these young people, either we come to terms with leading on climate change, or there's going to be more protests.
Well, we need all ages on deck against climate change. I mean, my main issue with
how can they be leading on climate change? That would mean if you're leading on climate change, most of the idea of climate change is to verzichten, to give up stuff for fate. So if they want to lead by not having holidays, not having cars, not having mobile phones, and eating bugs, that's fine. Let them lead.
Yeah, let them do it. But the funny thing is, if we look at the contribution of Australia, seriously, I have looked this up. Okay, Australia produces almost 1.5% of all the CO2 produced by humans. So 1.5%. Okay, now here's the calculation. There is 0.03% of CO2 in the atmosphere. Okay. 97% of that 0.03% is created by nature itself, and only about 3% is caused by humans. So this means that there is 0.0005% of CO2 in the atmosphere because of humans. And only 1.5% of that is from Australia. So then we're talking about 0.0000015 as the Australian contribution to climate change. If they would reduce that to absolutely zero, which they can't, it's impossible, but let's pretend that they can. It means
it won't make a fucking difference.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But hey,
but
it sounds good.
Yeah. It's just that I mean, that's the whole thing about this female empowerment movement. That at the end of the day, unless there's a bottom line, and it is don't get me wrong, it's a multi-million-dollar industry. That whole feminism thing, they're not gonna move very much. They're not. It's just illusion. It's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like pretend. It's a game of pretend. That's what it is.
I would be willing to put all feminists on a desert island to fend for them,
Fend for themselves, yeah.
fend for themselves for the climate. Well, that won't help. That won't help. A human breathes out around 700 grams of CO2 per day. You will breathe out about 700 grams of CO2 per day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if CO2 is a problem, I'm sorry, I'm ludicrous. Say no to island pollution. Just load them up in a rocket and fire them into the sun. And they might corrupt the sun, mate. They might corrupt the sun. But I did make a calculation on how much CO2 is in our environment, and I'm pleased to say that it's a ridiculously large amount in a much ridiculously larger amount. I did the calculations on my other video. We're talking about an atmosphere of 5,500,000 billion cubic tons of atmosphere, and within that there's about 30 billion tons of CO2. So let me put it like this: a drop on a hot plate has a better chance of being noticed than the CO2 in the amount of atmosphere we have. But yeah, no, let's none of them are talking about how we should educate our children. All of them say we need to protest, we need to listen and believe, and we need to help them. None of them talks about, you know what, maybe we need to find out what the reality behind it all is.
Yeah, there's no real solutions. This is just like, it's just a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, they've already decided that what they say is true, and therefore it must be.
The science is settled.
Yeah, the science is settled.
The most stupid thing that I've ever heard.
Yeah. And there are still people who think that's a real thing. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Hello and welcome to Q&A.
Bloody hell. See, this is the
What was all that applause for?
Yeah, because I accidentally...
Oh, did you end it, is it?
No,
I you skipped forward.
No, I pressed the bottom to go all the way to the back. I'm sorry,
all right.
Is frankly ridiculous.
My fine motor skills are bad.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been here already.
Hannah?
Who don't have other avenues.
And we older people need to join them.
And this is where we were.
Vote. They are now being criminalised for protesting.
And they're not being criminalised for protesting.
Not listening to them.
They're criminalised for protesting in the wrong way.
Either we come to terms with
Causing
leading
disruptions
on climate change, or there's going to be more protests.
Well, we need...
And I don't understand. How does Australia think they can be leading in the climate protest bullshit? I mean, they're living on an island that is one of the hottest places on the world, and they are not a major polluter. And in all fairness, it's a big continent. Other than that, it's not really that interesting. As I said, 1.2 to 1.5% of CO2 created by men. Roughly 1.2% to 1.5% is created by Australians. Even amongst humans, they're not a big polluter. Doesn't matter. Incredible.
We need all ages on deck against climate change. I mean, my main issue with what Obama said is that it was framed a little bit as old versus young, and that's just the ancient, most, oldest tactic in the world to divide up groups that would otherwise join forces.
Just on the point that Obama was making.
Projection.
Yes, that's the funny thing. I mean, here they are protecting. Sorry.
Projection. I mean.
No, it's projection. You're correct. Here they are talking about how women should stand up against men, how the young should stand up against the old because of global warming, and how Obama is bad because he's making it an us versus them thingy based on age. But the whole, everything they've been talking so far has been them against the patriarchy, them against white men, them against bloody hell. See, the thing is, when people talk about the luck of the Irish, they talk about how it's a good thing that they have bad luck, otherwise they would have had no luck at all. Well, when it comes to feminists, it's good that they have double standards, otherwise they wouldn't have had any standards at all.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Is there anything, old versus young, true, but what about, was there...
No, there is no old versus young true. But hey, great being a neutral talk leader there.
An element of it's easy on social media to take a pot shot at somebody and you're not actually doing anything in yourself. But meanwhile, you've caused a lot of grief for someone and nothing much has changed. Is that valid at all, Jess?
No, it's not. And yes, thank you, Renovatio, how non-whites should stand up against the whites. Is it valuable to talk about this? No, it's not. You want to make solutions? Do you want to help create a better society? Then stop the fucking polarizing. But then again, there's 5 feminists and a feminist talkmaster. Yeah, you just know they are going to keep polarizing. Everything you're seeing right here is one set of the coin. And they are the ones that feel that they are being oppressed. Yeah. Continue.
It is, and there's certainly a bit of that in the cancel culture that people talk about and whatever. But, I also agree with what people are saying on this panel, which is like, there are voices on social media now that we have never heard from. It's one of the best things about social media. There's some rampant awfulness about social media, but that is the best thing.
Yeah, but the rampant awfulness is the feminists claiming that kill all men is a good thing, and white tears is a good thing, and white men need not apply is a good thing, and
I think it's a bit on both sides. It's very adversary. There's a lot of adversary talk on social media. That's just the name of the game, because it's so easy to talk. It's much easier to get access to your enemies now. You didn't have that without the internet.
Fair enough. But let's be honest. When there were people talking negative about people of color, they could get blocked. When people talk negative about women, they could get blocked. But when people talk bad about white men, hey, it's only a joke. When people talk bad about how white women voted for Trump, well, they're race traitors or sex traitors or whatever. That's acceptable. But when you point out the fact that they're lying or that they're hypocritical, then you're going to be banned because you're not allowed to do that. Hell, Milo Yiannopoulos lost his Twitter account because he made, or rather he didn't even make the joke, he laughed at the joke on what's her name, Leslie, the black actress, I forgot her name.
Harambe, no, sorry.
Yeah, Harambe, that one. And he laughed. And he got his account blocked. But have you seen some of the tweets that woman put out around that time? She was actually inciting violence. She wasn't laughing at a joke of someone. No, she was actually inciting violence. But that's acceptable. See, if these people didn't have double standards, they didn't have standards at all.
And is that your baby being awake?
Yes, unfortunately he is. We're listening to my baby. Leslie Jones, thank you, Ludicrous.
Leslie,
always.
Bless you.
Always good to know you have my back, mate. Appreciate it.
This book about domestic abuse, I had their voices in my head and I had their scrutiny on my shoulder.
Sorry, but you had voices in your head. You should probably go see a doctor. You should probably go see a doctor. I mean, if you have vocal hallucinations, that's a sign that there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, it was just a memory.
It's not even about blocking anymore. Here in Ireland, we are now to be criminalized for speaking against anyone who is not a straight white man with about to be announced hate speech legislation. Yeah, I'm not sure, Renovacio, but you could be correct.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, they're planning shit.
And indeed, Michael, time for a shrink.
And it made me write a better book. Because I thought someone can call me out. If I write something that isn't nuanced enough, or if I betray, the principles or whatever I do.
The principle of the left, because
Betray the principles.
If you
Oh
portray
my
the principle
God.
of the right, or the principles of reality, people don't bat an eye. But oh my God, if you go against the principles of the left, as I said, if it weren't for double standards, they'd have no standards at all. I believe this woman that she had voices in her head. That's about the only thing she said that made sense.
Someone's going to call me
You
out
will be
for it,
called
and
out.
it was great.
I want to address further the protest point, because I think this is a really significant moment in your history. And I say this as that Egyptian American, because, one part of me, Egypt, we began a revolution in 2011, and it's not gone very well, obviously. And the other part of me is the American, and we have this fascist fuck called Donald Trump as president. And you're...
Well, in Egypt, they had several years ago. They had this thing against the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, actually, no. First, they had it against the then dictator. I forgot his name. Azizi or something. And then the Muslim Brotherhood came to power in an election, and then the people rose up against that because they were as corrupt as fuck as well. And now she's here talking about how she's also an American. Yeah, no, my dear, you've lived a few years in America. That's not the same thing.
Okay.
Prime Minister here is a mini version of Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump obviously is a racist. And the Prime Minister of Australia therefore must be a racist too. Is there a reason to say such a thing? No, but it sounds nice.
It proves nothing. I mean, it just means, I'm part of the progressive crowd.
Yeah.
Praise me.
Praise me.
That whole Donald Trump thing is just such a lazy trope. That's what it is. Nothing else.
It's a trope.
Just people. It's just for people who have no original ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I have yet to hear one true argument about Trump. Well, he's a racist. Okay, why is he a racist? Because he is.
Yeah.
He hates women.
Yeah.
Why does he hate women? Because he does. Well, he once said something about how women let you grab him by the pussy. And I'm like, that word let implies consent.
Yeah.
So they stopped saying...
Can't say the truth as a white man.
No, and that's why in modern... Because when it started... It was like, he says women let them grab you by the pussy. This is bad. And people started pointing out, remember, let mean consent. So now they're saying, no, he grabs women by the pussy.
That made that thing that he is really an assaulter, and
And I'm like, the dude has been a president for 3 years. For 5 years, they've been trying to destroy his character. And yet, no woman has stood up to say how he raped her. Or how he assaulted her.
Yeah.
This
must
guy...
not forget he's also pissing on hookers and letting Putin elect himself and whatnot. It's all just somebody told me, somebody felt, somebody. It's just all bull. They have nothing, absolutely nothing.
Well, the Trump thing. What grinds my gears? What I find really annoying is Russia. Oh, Ukraine. See the Ukraine. And I'm like, guys, don't you know that the Ukraine and Russia are basically at war with each other? So either...
But it was in Russia.
Either it's Russia or it's the Ukraine. Trust me, it cannot be both. Yeah, but well, then it's the Ukraine. And then next week it will be Russia again, don't worry.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, thank you, Michael Keller. Mubarak.
Because we're talking about
Mubarak Obama.
Sorry?
Mubarak Obama.
That's not really the same thing.
Capitalists, etc., etc. And we've got Donald Trump is a wannabe dictator. He wants to be able to do what the fascist president of my country of birth is doing.
Okay,
Oh
so
yeah. She can read minds again.
Trump
Very important.
wants to do what the fascist dictator of her country is doing, and yet she lives in America and she hasn't been arrested, even though she says something like this on television. What would happen to her if she would say something like this about the Egyptian president and she would go back to Egypt? I'm thinking it might not end well for her. Hillary administered working with a Russian agent a few weeks ago. Raise your feet flat joke incoming. Okay, here we go.
And when your prime minister, who is also a Christian evangelical, like Mike Pence in the United States, white evangelicals in the US voted for Trump. So you're on a parallel path here. When they start talking about the media as enemies of the people, when they start talking about banning boycotts.
They started talking about the media because they are provably lying to people. The whole term fake news wasn't made up by Trump. It was made up by CNN. Funny enough, it bit them in the ass. I guess calling other news outlets fake news and then kind of proving yourself to be fake doesn't help. But it wasn't Trump who made that. And
No.
yeah, because Mike Pence is a Christian and the other guy is a Christian. There because they're both the same. Because obviously all Christians are white supremacist racists who try their best to make sure that people of color have a good time in their country. I guess white people make the worst kind of racists. I think that's what it boils down to. I mean, if indeed Trump is a racist, then why the hell are unemployment numbers for non-white people so low? Seems like unreasonable of him to help these people of color for a racist. Or perhaps he's not a racist. Could that be true?
You have to start asking what is happening to your so-called democracy as young people and people of all ages, not just young people, are rising up against the world. I mean, across the world, Chile, Hong Kong, Lebanon, Iraq, people are risking their lives for the sake of protest. And your ostensibly democratically elected prime minister wants to ban boycotts?
Yeah, because what's happening in Chile or Iraq is almost the same as what happens in England and Australia. People fighting to survive, or people fighting because they don't want people to use CO2.
What?
I'm sorry, I can't even make a joke about this. This is too stupid. This is simply too stupid.
I don't even know what kind of boycotts she's talking about. She's talking about employees of the government not being able to boycott products from Israel. I'm not sure what she's talking about.
I have no idea either. She can't be talking about the boycott against Chick-fil-A because Chick-fil-A is a Christian organization and it's the left that boycotted them.
Yeah.
And there are more companies like
maybe
that.
it's Iran or something more along those lines. I'm not sure. Anyway, let's continue.
And
let's not
indeed,
speculate.
Renovatio, it's kind of funny how she didn't mention Venezuela. They never do nowadays. It used to be the post child of successful socialism, but now, oh yeah, they don't like it.
Boycotts helped end apartheid in South Africa.
Oh, yeah.
So ask yourself where...
Boycotts didn't help end apartheid in South Africa. In all fairness, the only reason why South Africa's apartheid was ended is, funny enough, the same reason why Rhodesia got fucked over and turned into Zimbabwe, is because the international community turned against the country. All countries in the world turned against Rhodesia, supported the socialist terrorists. In South Africa, they supported the socialist terrorists. Because here we now talk about how Mandela was such a great guy. But the guy was a terrorist. He killed people. That's what he went to jail for. He didn't go to jail because he didn't agree with the government. He went to jail because he didn't agree with the government and therefore felt it completely fine to kill people. Most people in the West don't even know that anymore. But hey, free Nelson Mandela. What made the apartheid state fail? It wasn't the boycotts. It was the continuous attack from the Western world, actually from the United Nations, against the then black supremacist, white supremacist government. And look at the rainbow state now. Hell, I'm pretty sure that even Mandela would cry in his sleep if he saw what his country had become. But never mind that.
Is he taking
And they
you?
test your boundaries as well.
But,
That's
but also, Naika, this Morrison government wouldn't be the first government to, have a crack at protesters, young protesters. I mean, we never
Toby
has.
Alki Peterson.
Well, Vietnam, I mean, are we just seeing a usual cycle here, or is it something different, do you think?
Well, I wasn't around during Vietnam. But yeah, it does seem like business as usual. And part of me is, part of me is thinking, well, perhaps there is something that people are doing right now that's really effective and scaring the shit out of him, which is...
No, it's not that it's scaring the shit out of him. It's upsetting people. And they recognize that if people get too upset, it might actually turn violent. It's almost as if they don't want to see that. Anyway, I think we've lost Real Raven already.
No, you haven't lost me. It's just that I'm not quite sure what kind of political stuff they're talking about, so I don't have too much to contribute.
They're basically still talking about whether people should or should not be allowed to protest.
Yeah, I know. It's just that they bring a lot of examples that I can't really, I can't really say anything about.
Well, you know what?
No, you brought your own examples, which is fine. It's just.
But considering that we've been going on it for about 2 hours, it's all about. Let's call it a quits.
Maybe go on a little bit more. I just want to see if they come to any conclusion, or it's just like there's a lot of what I feel is a lot of equivocating. It's like we have it so bad because, and then they go to all these other countries.
Well,
it's like they're not talking about Australia, really.
Of course, they're not.
It's just more like
they're
they're kind of borrowing other people's oppressions to rationalize their own violence, or
No, they're talking about Australia too, because some of the protests are happening in Australia because.
The protests are, yes, but the reasons for them. It's just like there's this violence that we do, right? That we carry out, and it's just because of. And then look at all the other countries and all the oppression in the other countries.
Okay,
there's a disconnect there. We're gonna borrow other people's oppressions. We have to go to these extreme measures because I don't know. I'd like to hear a bit more. Maybe they come to the real conclusion, and that is nobody listens to us.
Well,
that's really what irks them.
Nobody should listen to them. Let's be honest.
Yes.
But no, let's continue.
But we really have to be, I think, wary. If we think about the digital sort of invasion of our privacy and legislation that's enabled that, as well as I think there's been a creep towards giving police more powers against protesters, like Queensland's looking at it down here in Victoria. I think, so yeah, Scott Morrison can say what he wants, but then there's things like, how do you legislate against boycotts? I don't even know how that...
Yeah, but nobody's talking about legislating against boycotts. They're legislating against people disrupting traffic or the normal flow of people through a city.
I mean, she's not wrong about surveillance. That stuff that shit is being stepped up everywhere. Yeah. But it's partly a counter reaction to people being violent while wearing masks. If you have to wear a mask to misbehave, I understand the call for anonymity. I think anonymity on the internet is a good thing, because that's you don't really do harm to people. You just open about your opinion.
Yeah, but on
And
the
that's
street,
where
it's a problem.
yeah, that's a different thing. If you start like kicking in uh, cars or windows or whatever, and
Yeah.
like throwing bombs, then you shouldn't be anonymous
Yeah, I
at that
agree.
point.
I agree. I agree. Anyway, let's see where they bring it further. I don't think there's much coming else, to be honest.
No, I'm not sure they know either.
I don't-
So, but they're
I
thinking
think
about it. That's the point.
but that's a promise for me. When I hear him say that, that's him trying to get in with the Resource Council. That's him.
Virtue signaling.
Yeah, he's just.
So here we have a group of people continuously virtue signaling, but then people who want to make sure that there's less disruptions on the street, well, they're just virtue signaling. But we should all recognize that, yeah, we should listen to the kids, because the kids know what's best. How is that not virtue signaling? I think I said it before, but if it weren't for double standards, they have no standards at all.
Trying to, yeah, I'm on your side, guys. I don't know how much he can actually do, but on the state level, particularly on the state level, we need to make sure that we're.
Just before we leave the whole protesting thing, Mona, I'm just wondering. There's people, kids mostly on the streets in Hong Kong, young men and women in Iraq,
Lebanon,
in Lebanon.
Chile.
Is something different happening now? It's not just. It isn't just social media or what are they? Slacktivism. It's not that.
It's not.
It's people on the streets.
Yes, and these people are on the streets in Hong Kong because they don't want to fall under the heel of China. In Venezuela, because the country is being destroyed by their government. In Chile, because their country is being destroyed by their government. Do I need to continue? Or do you want to compare those people with people in Australia trying to block traffic because CO2 is a problem? And you're equating that these are all of the same value?
Yeah.
And I can seriously not understand these people. I seriously have a problem saying, okay, you know what? Yeah, no, okay, you have a point. How can you compare the two? People are being shot by the police in Hong Kong because they don't want to be controlled by China in a negative way. And those people are going through the same thing as white kids protesting in the Western world by breaking windows. Yeah, no, they're also victims. Well, never mind the fact that in Chile, Venezuela, and Hong Kong people are actually dying, and here they have to wait half an hour longer for their mocha latte or something.
Spicy pumpkin.
Spicy pumpkins, yeah.
I think what we're seeing happening across the world is the rise of two things. One is we're seeing these patriarchal authoritarians, as I've said, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Trump in the US, Scott Morrison here, and others. And then we're also seeing a rise of people saying no. People saying we will resist. And as a
Actually, no, it's the rise of Trump that is people saying, no, we will resist. It was a movement to stop the how do you call it? The push for globalism, the protection.
Drain the swamp.
Yeah, the protection of the political classes, the protection of feminists like you. And indeed, as Renovatio said, the people in Hong Kong don't want to be controlled by an evil, repressive left-wing system, but kind of the same system that these feminists seek to impose everywhere else.
Yeah, they don't understand principles.
Well, as I said, if it weren't for double standards, I fail to be funny when I repeat myself, but bloody hell if it isn't true. Well.
Feminist, for me, feminism is the best kind of resistance to that patriarchal authoritarianism. Because when you see all of the countries rising up, they're rising up against corruption, they're rising up against capitalism, they're rising up in Lebanon, they're rising up against sectarianism. There was a women's protest on Sunday that was rising up against patriarchy, sectarianism, and authoritarianism and corruption. So you.
Yeah, and they were also rising up against the death of puppies.
The Holy Ghost.
And the Holy Ghost, indeed. Yeah, no, mustn't forget. And how female circumcision is a bad thing, but male circumcision, who cares? Anything else I missed? Probably.
Probably.
Look,
There's a laundry list.
Yeah, they'll make up new stuff as they go along, and they ignore real things as much as they can. Because reality, who cares, right?
It's patriarchal.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that we know about so many of them, and it's so invigorating to see, is because of social media, is because we're so connected in ways that we weren't in the past. But I salute each and every person that goes out on the streets and risks their lives, and people have been killed for rights that you take for granted.
No. For rights you take for granted and try to take away from other people. People have been killed because they are upset and they want to get rid of an ideology that you want to put in power. Bloody hell. No, the rights you take for granted are the rights that we kind of want to keep for everyone. Even for women like you. Hence, that's why you're still allowed to speak, because as much as I'm upset by you, I won't deny you the right to speak. Funny enough, your people or your ideological betters or equals are perfectly all right with taking away the right to speak from people who disagree with you. Funny how that goes.
So don't think that because your economy is doing well, but when you have a prime minister who wants the pockets of capitalist giants like coal mining, how can you be talking about coal as 16-year-old young women are on the street saying, what kind of world are you giving us?
Yeah, what kind of world are we giving those 16-year-old women? A world with electricity and healthcare and food.
And social media.
And social media. No, we should take away coal, which would make energy completely difficult. I mean, we could all go nuclear, but nuclear isn't allowed by the left-wing conglomerate. So, yeah, so how should we get our electricity then? Oh, well, we can get our electricity with solar power and wind power, and that's very unreliable, so we will have lots of blackouts, so society will collapse. But that's okay, because at least feminism.
You must not forget that solar power is also one of those toys for rich people. You know, it's very, very expensive.
It's very expensive.
You know, it's very expensive for like the working class. That's something that's illusory.
Well, I wouldn't say
it's not there. You know,
I wouldn't say it's illusionary. It's simply not there. I mean, I have solar panels on my roof. My solar panels create an amount of electricity roughly equal to what I use per year.
Yeah.
Funny thing though.
There's also
the funny thing though.
You can't use it when you need it, right?
Yeah, because it creates that energy in about 4 months in the summer, from May till August, September.
Yeah.
But I don't have big enough batteries to store it. So when the sun is not out, I need to have some other form of getting electricity.
Yeah, but there's also that criticism that that's really out of reach for people who rent. They can't put up, you know, there's lots of people who rent who, you simply, like in Germany, there was this huge subsidization of solar, and that was simply out of reach for people who didn't have their own roofs or their own houses, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, so you have to have already invested, you already have to have like a baseline of wealth in order to, you know, so that's what's being forgotten, and that's why there's this criticism of the champagne socialists. I think there's also some champagne environmentalists, you know.
Yeah, no, it's the same group. It's the same bloody group of people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
They pretend to be different, but they're the same bloody idiots, and we take them serious because we don't know any better. Richard Beyer, if you start a patriarchal authority party, trust me, I'll join. Hell, if you need a spokesperson, I'll do what I can. Then again, if you want me as a spokesperson, maybe not the best idea because not a lot of people listen to me. Not because I don't make sense, but apparently I don't talk that nice. Anyway, people, we've passed the 2-hour marker. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'm thinking maybe Saturday will continue. Or maybe not, I don't know. The thing is, once you start recognizing that it's all double standards, it's all hypocrisy, it becomes very difficult to listen to it seriously. Or at least I have that problem. I'm not sure about you guys. But yeah, there is that.
Very hard to take them seriously anyway.
Yeah, indeed. Anyway, any last words from you, Real Raven?
No, just thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Yeah,
it was great.
It was. Well, thank you for coming, even though you missed... but then again, you missed the thing you wanted to see by 4 hours, so that's not my fault. Well, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for joining me. Like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. When it comes to my other channel, guys, I'm going to ask you politely to share whatever I put out there, because apparently that's the only way YouTube will allow people to find me if someone else points me towards me. This is becoming a very long sausage. Yes, I know. Sorry, what did you want to say?
I just said word of mouth. That's the most reliable.
I haven't pushed for it, but I'm going to push for it. People, please share my stuff so that more people will see my stuff. And if there's something you want to be taken into talks, let me know, and maybe you can join me or whatever. There won't be an after stream today, sorry guys, but I have to try and get some bed rest as well. Thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you all next time. And that's it for today.
Thanks.